This is Lesson 10 Embroidery Part 1. We are going to learn how to use a needle and thread to do some stitchery. If you've never done sewing or stitchery before, no worries, this is for beginners. I'm going to step you through the whole process. There are many different kinds of stitches. We're going to use the basic stitch, the running stitch at the top. I'll also teach you a couple of other things to do with this stitch. But a lot of people think that stitching is just for making clothes or for sewing, but actually it can be an art form. Today, people all over the world do embroidery, but it dates back to the early 5th century, 2,400 years ago. It is believed that the Chinese are responsible for its origin. Check out this amazing piece of embroidery from China. These handmade pieces of embroidery are meant to embellish or to make things beautiful. Embroidery can also be important to someone's culture. The embroidery stitches may have meaning or depict stories. Stitchery and embroidery are making a huge comeback in today's art world. Notice that many of them are done on hoops. The hoop helps hold the piece of fabric in place while the artist is stitching. There are literally hundreds of different kinds of stitches, but we're really going to focus on one or two. We are going to learn the running stitch. We will be using a needle and a piece of yarn. We will also learn how to create a knot. I know you've got this. Before we get started, we need to go over some materials. In your packet, you will find a piece of burlap. This is the burlap we are going to be doing our embroidery. You will also find a needle and yarn set with a little piece of paper. You will also need a pencil and a coloring material. Could be paint or it could just be a marker. Using a pencil, I'm going to lightly draw the first letter of my name. Well, in this case, I'm going to use an H for Hutchins, so I'll let you choose. You can do your first or your last name. Then, after you do that, make sure it's dark enough, make sure it's even, and then start putting straight lines, or if it's a curved letter, curved lines around it. Think about how we use block letters on the bulletin boards. Think about how each letter has a thickness to it and try to make it as even as possible. You can erase a little bit on this. It's okay if you can't erase it because you can always stitch over it. Also, if you have a curved letter or a letter with a circle in the middle, make sure you add that. All right, now I'm going to use my coloring material to lightly color the burlap all the way around my pencil marks. You can choose to draw a box or a heart or an oval around your letter. I'll let you choose. A box is definitely easier to stitch. If you want to try something more complex, you certainly can. Then get out your little piece of paper, your white paper that is inside. Notice it fits perfectly right into the eye of your needle. The other end is the point. Open up your yarn and take one piece, a color of your choice, out from the bunch, and we're going to practice making a knot. What you're going to do is make a loop, tuck the end through the loop, and pull it tight, just like the first knot when you're tying your shoes. You want to do this at least 3 times to get the right size knot. You only need to do this to one end of your yarn, but you must do this at the end so that the yarn does not go through the fabric when you pull it tight. Now we're going to use this piece of paper to thread our needle. Put your piece of yarn from the opposite end of your knot into the middle of the white paper. Slide the 2 ends of the white paper through the needle and pull it all the way through until your yarn is through, and pull off the white paper. Make sure that shorter piece of yarn, I call it the tail, is about 4 to 5 inches long so that as you are pulling it through the fabric, it does not come off the needle. Now we are going to poke our needle from the underside up through and go to that first corner or edge of our shape. You're going to pull the yarn all the way through until the knot hits the back. Now you're going to follow your line that you created, going down, up, until you get about 2 to 3 stitches on your needle. Then pull it through until the yarn is nice and straight. Make sure you don't have any loose yarn left over. I want to make them about equal distance apart so that it looks nice and neat. At some point you might make an oops and you might miss your line. It's an easy way to fix it, but you got to take the needle off the yarn and pull out your stitches. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody has to learn how to change and make changes to their stitchery at some point. Just take your little paper and thread your needle again, and then start back where you were. Remember, when you get to a corner or an edge, you want to make sure you stop at that corner and take a turn. Make sure your stitch goes all the way to the end of that corner, and then just keep going in the other direction. To finish off a piece of yarn, you are going to push your needle through to the back and pull it all the way through until you don't see any more yarn on the front. Then you're going to go under your last stitch to tie a knot. When you pull it through, you'll see a loop. Go through the loop and pull it tight. You're going to do that at least 2 times, 3 times if you want to be extra careful. Go through the loop again and pull it tight. When you cut the yarn, you do not want to cut it close to the knot. Leave about 1/2 inch to 1 inch extra yarn so that it doesn't come untied. And that's it. Take all your extra pieces of yarn, your little piece of white paper, and your needle and put them back into your art packet for our next art zoom. I'll see you then.